What's up, everybody? We're back to talk about some more Malifaux lore, and this week we're talking about Jedza from the Explorer Society. So spoilers coming up for all of Jedza's stories, and you can find a list of the stories in the description below, so make sure you check them out. And while you're down there, don't forget to like and subscribe if you're enjoying this series. And with that, let's get into Jedza. When Jedza was young, she was a wanderer, always on the road and never staying in the same place. She thought she was given a gift, as wherever she went, life seemed a little more vibrant, and dead flowers would bloom in her presence. She knew she was being hunted, and she witnessed horrible things in the forest. And as she got older, death never found her. She started to think that her gift was a curse, and wherever she went, the dead would try to crawl up out of their graves and grab at her ankles. She spent centuries exploring the world, seeing kingdoms rise and fall, and acquiring wealth but always giving it away. She had seen many loved ones die, and she started to see everything as temporary and meaningless. When the breach opened, Jedza's curiosity was sparked, and she traveled to Earth, but was then stuck there when the breach collapsed. Eventually, her past caught up with her, and she was saved by a mysterious woman who asked for a favor in return. And after the breach reopened, the woman called in that favor, and now Jedza walks with a purpose. Jedza, Mikhail, and Sophie are trudging through the bayou, and Mikhail is complaining about the mosquitoes. Jedza teases him, as she doesn't have any blood for the mosquitoes to be interested in. He checks on the person tied up on Sophie's back, and confirms that it's still alive. As they continue their trek, Jedza stops and asks Mikhail to let her know if he gets tired, as she does not mean to forget. Mikhail says that he's fine, as long as she doesn't let the witch cast a hex on him. They approach Zorada's hut and knock on the door, and a voodoo doll opens it and lets them in. They see symbols drawn on the floor in chalk, as well as bottles and books everywhere, and Jedza asks if Zorada missed her. Zorada shoots back that she misses her clean floor, and Jedza says that's no way to greet an old friend. Zorada confirms that she is in fact old, and explains that she makes Mikhail look like he was born yesterday. Both women laugh and then hug each other, before sitting down at the table, leaving no space for Mikhail. Jedza explains that Gretchen from the Malifaux Explorer Society has called in her favor, but that she does not like the mission. She says that it's a bad idea to go stirring up the past, and she does not like that she has to bring along a lawman and his daughter. Zorada wonders what Gretchen has on the lawman to get him involved, and Jedza is annoyed, explaining that she only needs Mikhail as a bodyguard. The swamp hag asks why she's here, and Jedza explains that she needs a thread made. When Zorada looks concerned, Jedza explains that there's no other way. Zorada responds that there will be a cost, and asks if that's why Jedza has allowed Mikhail to come inside this time. But Jedza replies that they brought their own, and Zorada is surprised as she didn't think the woman had it in her. Jedza explains that it's someone who will not be missed, and asks if Zorada will help her. The witch says that she knows where Jedza is going, and she has a question that she wants her to ask, and report directly back to her. And if she agrees, she'll make the thread. Jedza accepts, and Mikhail goes outside, and brings in a bag with a body inside. Zorada unwraps it, and exclaims that they were right, as nobody will miss this man. Jedza and Mikhail head back outside, and hear the sounds of screaming and crunching coming from inside the hut. Afterwards, they head off to the rendezvous point with their new companions. They approach the sheriff and his daughter, and there's an awkward silence before Jedza decides to introduce herself and her companions. Cornelius Bass tells them that they should rest here for the night and then set off in the morning, and then stops to double check that they do in fact rest. Jedza replies that everyone rests, and they join him at his campfire. Bass asks about the mission, and Jedza explains that it should be quick and easy, only taking a few days. Bass and his daughter seem surprised, and Jedza explains that Gretchen needed them to come because they are living and trustworthy. Bernadette asks if they are necromancers, and Jedza says no, but that there are some places she cannot go in her condition. Mikhail suggests that they eat, and he produces some food and starts making a soup, and Bass offers some bread and cheese to go along. The two discuss Mikhail's maintenance of his sword, and Bernadette offers to take Jedza's pack for her. Mikhail laughs and says that he doesn't think the three of them would be able to carry it alone, and Bernadette is curious about what Jedza is carrying. The woman starts rummaging through her pack and producing random knickknacks that she's acquired on her travels. They all eat the soup, and then Jedza tells stories of her adventures as they drift off to sleep. The next morning they wake up and eat breakfast, and then set out on their mission. Bernadette asks Mikhail if he is alive, and he says yes, but that they are too in a way, motioning to Jedza and Sophie. She asks how he got tied up with them, and he explains that a promise was made, and that he is not the first Mikhail. Bernadette is confused, and he shows her his blade, with the names of his descendants inscribed on it. He explains that there is always a Mikhail in his family, and Mikhail always accompanies Jedza. Bernadette is impressed and asks how old she is, and Mikhail responds that she was already old when she saved his people, and that was centuries ago. They continue their journey, and eventually make it to a railway, where a representative from Condor Rails escorts them to a luxury train car. Jedza and Mikhail make themselves comfortable, and the Basses are impressed at the opulence of the train. Mikhail pours himself a drink and offers one to Bass, and they all spend the next day eating and relaxing. When they arrive at their destination, they exit the train car, and then board a dirigible for the next stage of their journey. Bass seems nervous, and Mikhail teases him, before Jedza asks Bernadette if she is also afraid of heights. The girl confidently says no, but then the ship shakes as it takes off, and she loses some of her bravado. After a short trip, they exit the dirigible and find themselves up in the mountains, where Jedza leads them to a mine entrance. She takes a roll off of Sophie's back and lays it down on the ground, allowing the animal to stand on it. As she walks away, Mikhail explains to the group, who was confused at her behavior, that Sophie sometimes rolls around. And as they follow Jedza into the mine, they look back to see Sophie collapse into a pile of bones. As they get deeper into the mine, Jedza passes a skeleton on the ground, and it starts to move, as if it's reanimated. Bernadette gets uncomfortable, but Jedza assures her it's going to be okay, and continues walking, and soon the skeleton settles down. Jedza explains to the bases that this is a place where lost things go to be forgotten, and that they are to touch nothing. She emphasizes that they cannot trust their eyes or ears, and that they should follow her and keep their heads down. Eventually, they come to the remains of a human-like creature, and Jedza hands Bernadette a piece of thread and tells her to drape it across the figure's back. Cornelius readies his shotgun, and Bernadette does as she's told. As the figure begins animating, the soul stones in its eye sockets glowing, and it struggles to try to move away. The thread across its back holds it down, and Jedza tries to calm the creature, telling it that she is not one of their servants. It settles down and asks what she wants, and she tells it that she wants information on the machine, and that she's already got the first piece. The creature tells her that she has to give something of equal value, and that it senses something of the tyrant's with her. She produces a small crystal lens and puts it on the floor. It accepts and gives Jedza a cryptic description of where she can find each piece of the machine, concluding with the fifth piece, which it tells her it has in its own possession. Jedza asks the creature for the piece, and tells it that she has another question, leaning closer and whispering her inquiry so no one can hear. It grins and says that it can answer, but that this time it wants the girl as the price. Base cocks his shotgun and it gets tense as Mikhail prepares himself to defend Jedza. The woman calls out to calm them down and orders Mikhail to lower his sword before explaining to the creature that the girl is not part of the deal and that she alone will pay the price. The creature agrees but explains that if she refuses its next request, she'll leave empty-handed, and then it tells her that it wants the thing that is most valuable to her. She removes a chain from around her neck with 2 rings attached and hesitates for a moment before placing them in front of the creature. It accepts and whispers the answer to her and then produces a small orb. It explains that it has more information for her and then touches her on the forehead, and she suddenly understands. She then picks up the orb and turns to leave, and the creature collapses. On their way out, they suddenly hear a crash, and Jedza turns to find that Bernadette has tripped over a mirror. She scolds the girl and reminds her not to touch anything, and then they all make their way out of the mine. No one notices that a form ripples across the surface of the mirror when they're gone. Once outside, they collect Sophie and then head back to the airship. Jedza hands Base the orb and a handwritten note and tells him to bring them to Gretchen at the Explorer Society. She then cautions him not to touch the orb for too long and then puts it in a bag for him. Bernadette says she's sorry that Jedza had to give up her rings, and Jedza responds that they aren't as valuable as a life. The bases get on the ship, and Jedza explains that they will not be joining them. The airship takes off, and Jedza, Mikhail, and Sophie begin walking away. Mikhail asks her what the creature told her, and if she had lips, she would have smiled. Just as Jedza had settled down for some peace and quiet, and had made some progress on learning about her curse, the Burning Man had to come and ruin it. Gretchen and Zoraida both reached out to her, but she had already made up her mind. The Burning Man has to be dealt with. She set out with her retinue, avoiding populated areas, and no one in the group seems to know where they're going. Jedza has started to learn to control her magic, giving her power over the forces of life and death, so anyone who tries to stop her will find out the hard way that she's not just a weary old traveler. So that's it on Jedza. She's definitely an interesting one. I'll be really curious to see if they ever flesh out some of the things that went on in that cave. What's going on with that machine? What question did she get answered for Zoraida? And what the hell was that thing she was talking to anyway? Weird definitely seems to like to leave some of these questions unanswered, but maybe now with the Burning Man and the situation with the tyrants, we might learn a little bit more about what's going on. But it'll definitely be interesting to see Jedza interact with the other characters a little more. Since she's so old, she probably has a lot of history and knows a lot about the world. But anyway, drop a comment below and let me know what master you want to see me do a video on next. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to keep seeing these episodes coming out. And thanks for watching.